headquarters at 38 LaSalle Road in West Hartford, taken from an old film made in 1935. That was before I came to the League. And we're going to run a visit to the headquarters and show you some of the people and what they're doing. This is George Hart, W1NJM. This is the front lobby. We were only on the second floor then of the building at 38 LaSalle. And that's the receptionist. I really don't know her name. She was before my time. The other two are visitors. Arthur Hebert was the treasurer of the League, and he did a lot of greeting of visitors. He was the first general manager of the League before World War I. And now we go into the executive office where we'll meet the big boss, K.B. Warner, secretary and general managing and editor of QST. KB was a great guy. He was one of the great men of the League, the first secretary. And there's the old dictaphone that we used then to dictate letters. KB's office, as you can see, was a small corner, and still bigger than most of the offices. There's Budlong, A.L. Budlong, W1BUD, who became general manager of the League when KB died in 1948. And Bud lived down in South Lyme, down on the Long Island Sound. I've been to his place many times. There's Bud Hart at work, assistant secretary of the League. And when KB died of a heart attack in 1948, Budlong took over. That gentleman there is Clinton B. DeSoto, the author of 200 Meters and Down. He was assistant secretary. Later on, during the World War II era, he became editor of QST. I don't remember the name of the department secretary. Here's the communications department with F.E. Handy, W1BDI communications manager, in his hole-in-the-wall office. Practically all the offices were holes in the wall in that little building. It seemed grand to us at the time, but it later became very overcrowded. There's Lillian Salter, the department secretary, and Ev Batty, W1UE, later W4IA. He's a very great guy, a very good operator. There's the old perforator, the old Kleinschmidt perforator that they used to run the tape on the W1MK official bulletins, and later that same perforator was used at W1AW. You see the two holes with the center holes there? It was run by solenoids and ran off DC. And there were it took a lot of current, but there were no rectifiers big enough for that, except one that was made by Western Electric, and they lasted about 6 months. The accounting department was down on the first floor, and there's Alice Scanlon, who was the assistant treasurer, and Arthur Hebert, treasurer and field man. We call him the field man because he did most of the traveling around, and he was a very outgoing personality, a great guy. Now that gal is familiar, but I'm darned if I can remember her name. She worked in the treasurer's department also, the accounting department. There is Clark C. Rodeman, W1, what was he called? W1SZ, the managing editor, and Ross Hall, who was a familiar name to most of the people, most of the old-timers especially. Ross was electrocuted 2 weeks after I got to the League in 1938, accidentally electrocuted. It was a very big tragedy. Jim Lamb was a technical editor, very great guy. He was a wonderful guy. He was the inventor of the superhet receiver, the single signal receiver. He had several patents on it. Jim Lamb was a real genius in the early days of the League. George Grammer was the assistant technical editor at that time. He later became the technical editor and the technical director of the League. He was still around when we moved to Newington, 225 Main. Don Mix was the assistant technical editor, Don was a great operator, a great contest man, and a great DX man. There's a laboratory with Jim Lamb tuning up the tri-tet, which he invented, the tri-tet oscillator, crystal oscillator. Especially good because it was great on harmonics. And Jim was always fooling with something. He always had something going, always researching something. The LaSalle Road building was not air conditioned, and in the summertime it got awful hot. And Ross Hull working on some 5-meter gear. We didn't have any 6-meter band in those days. Everything was on 5 meters. And that's the way it was. 6 meters and 2.5, or 5 meters and 2.5 meters were our VHF bands then. And Ross was a great VHF experimenter. When he was electrocuted, he was fooling with television. They didn't have any big flyback transformers then. They only had the big transformers with a lot of current, and he got across one of them and it wiped him out. There's George working in the workshop, in the lab, George Grammer. And there's Don Mix getting some equipment off the shelf in the parts department of the lab. Don was a real character. The headquarters sewing circle at noontime, the girls would get together and chew the rag, and I don't think they really sewed. This was probably set up. At least I never saw them sewing, but some of the girls there I recognize, but not many of them. The girls turn over rather rapidly because the pay wasn't very good. There's Lillian Salter on the right. The mail comes in into the accounting department. All the money is extracted and entered in the ledger at that time, and the mail is all stamped and passed down to the various departments by the mail girls, internal mail girls. We had 2 or 3 of them. The advertising manager was F.C. Beakley. Beakley was the inventor of the lip microphone that they used in tanks during World War II. He was very smart man. He also ran a printing company in West Hartford, besides being the advertising manager, for which he did not receive a salary, but he did get commissions, and his commissions amounted more than he would have gotten as a salary. Ursula Chamberlain, I never knew her. The circulation department was headed by David Houghton. Dave was not a ham, but he was with the League for a long time, about 45 years, and afterwards he became the League's treasurer. Ralph Bowden was the assistant circulation manager, and the 2 of them worked very well together. Ralph was these people were all personal friends of mine. Ralph just keeled over one day in the office. He died in the saddle, you might say. Dave Houghton lived for quite a while, and his total service to the League amounted to about 55 years, actually, as both as a member of the headquarters staff and as the treasurer afterwards. Clerical staff. He's noticed the old typewriters. The Underwood No. 5 was our favorite typewriter. These are Royals. We had some Royal noiseless typewriters, but these bear a little resemblance to the computers that we use nowadays, that's for sure. But the girls were quite adept at it, typing out mailing labels and membership certificates. The membership files at that time were card files. Later we went to addressograph, and of course now they're all computerized. But there's the files of all the members, and the records are kept on each card. Each member has a card of his own. You QST wrappers are addressed by a machine in the basement. QST was not printed at the headquarters and never has been, but we printed all the wrappers and sent them up to the printer, and he wrapped the issues. These are back issues of QST. They were sold for usually the same price as the regular issues. Handbooks were printed up in Rumford Press in Concord, New Hampshire, and they were shipped to the shipping room and shipped out from there. QSTs were not. QSTs were shipped out directly from the printers, and still are. The shipping room downstairs, I don't recognize the man in the shipping room unless it's Hal Isham, but I don't think it is. Doesn't look like Hal. It's somebody before my time. But he sure knows what he's doing. But in those days there were not too much machinery. Most of the stuff was done by hand. And official broadcasts, these were sent out to all the official broadcast stations. Appointments, league appointments. And they were all on mimeograph. They made the stencil and put the stencil on the roller and printed them up and sent them out. The first class mail came in and the mail was stripped. The envelopes were stripped and opened and the mail sorted. I think this is a stripping machine that strips the tops off the envelope so the contents can be taken out. In the conference room we have our rogues gallery, pictures of all the past presidents and all the greats of ARRL. There's Hiram Percy Maxim just left of the center on the bottom row now. That's Maxim. And at the end of the day, we come down the alley and there's Mr. Philip, what was his name? Philip Legere. I think that was his name, something like that. He was a janitor for many years, and he was to be seen every afternoon after the crew had left, mopping up, emptying wastebaskets, and doing things like that. Now we take a visit to W1MK, which was the headquarters station of the League from 1928 till 1936. Hal Bubb was a personal friend of mine and my first boss at W1AW. This was over at Brainerd Field in Hartford. And that is the machine that we used to send out the official bulletins. We didn't have code practice in those days. And those are some of the relays. The power supplies were mostly generators, motor generators. They delivered DC, and they weren't quite completely filtered, so that the 1MK signal had a distinct whine on it, which was very fetching. I used to love to listen to it, but it was distinctive. And there's some of the power supplies, the generators. All this was washed out in the flood of 1936. It was all under 12 feet of oily, muddy water. And everything was ruined except a few small items that we were able to rescue before the water came up. Last I remember, some of those old generators were on the attic at 1AW, at 225 Main Street. I don't know if they're still there or not. Well, that's it. Hope you enjoyed the visit. Just some of the old-time stuff at ARRL headquarters. Thank you for your kind attention. This is George Hart, W1NJM.